Now, we have Jeff Welton with us today. Always a privilege and a joy to talk with Jeff. And today, we kind of want to start off with the thought pattern of some things that maybe you know, maybe you don't know that you need at the transmitter site. And Jeff, where should we start?
Oh, well, first I'm going to start with what we were talking about earlier, which is absolutely non-related to this topic at all. But we got talking about, you remember in the prequel, if you will, we were talking about restarting the AUI. And so just because you're running 4.3 on the one you were talking about, I'm going to grab a screen share because I logged into mine. I am not going to grab a screen share while you got it disabled, though.
Now you have screen share.
There we go. Let's go with screen one. So you should, if I hit that button, be looking at the AUI for my station.
Yes, sir.
And if you go into menu and system settings, the very first thing you see is reboot AUI. Now, I'm not going to do it because it will disconnect me from the transmitter if I do it over the remote. I prefer to do it from the front panel, but that is the command you're looking for, and it's under system settings.
Great. Of course, this does require you to be logged in, which we can't do.
Right. So you're definitely going to have to do it from the front panel. All right. So that was that. I'm going to stop that share now. That was just, it came to mind and I had the ability to log in. So there we go. Next time you see that, hopefully you'll be looking at it on the shiny new AUI. The plug for our Tuesday sessions, we do have Matt talking about that. And he was here, what, a week or so ago?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that'll be kind of cool. It's kind of cool that it's out in limited release beta now. And so far, I haven't heard anybody come to me saying this dog doesn't hunt. So that's a good sign. All right. Talking about the things you need that, I mean, you're that you don't know you needed, or don't know you needed. Most of the stuff that I didn't know I needed these days is software related because it's just something that is not my strong suit. As soon as David started talking about Linux, I just kind of gray out and the deer in the headlights face. I know enough about it to be dangerous and not enough to do anything. But when we had our Gizmo session on the Tuesday a couple of weeks ago, one of the things that Tom Lawler had mentioned was a freeware program called Port Peaker. And that was actually, you know what, Barry, to make it easier, I think what I'll do is another screen share because I've got a couple, I've got the slide deck from that session up and there were a couple things that Tom had mentioned that were pretty cool.
Sure.
So I'll just share the raw PowerPoint instead of making everybody see a slideshow. Same damn thing, but we call it different. So Port Peaker was one of the ones when you want to, the cool thing about Port Peaker, if for example, you look at the IP address of your Nautel transmitter, port 7005, you'll be able to see if the RDS data is coming into it. And in the comments over to the right, you can actually read the RDS data. So, that's kind of useful because one of the biggest challenges I've run into with troubleshooting RDS is figuring out, is the data even getting to the transmitter from the automation system? So, having something like that will let you know that's a big troubleshooting tool. And by all means, anybody who thinks of anything related to this stuff as I ramble through it, unmute and yell it out, because I'll be the first to admit most of what I know is what I hear from other people.
Comment? Is this similar to, it looks like sort of a subset of Wireshark?
Sort of, kind of. And Wireshark, I use that myself. Wireshark almost gives you, because I don't know, can you look at a specific IP address with Wireshark? I mean, I've only ever used it to look at the whole network.
Yeah, yes, you can use Wireshark or Charles to look at a specific IP address.
Yeah, you just do a packet filter and it'll also let you follow a TCP stream. One thing about this, though, is that if you plug into a switch, you probably won't see it. You actually have to use a hub so that you can see traffic not destined to you.
Right.
The other thing that you might want to look at also is the Hercules tool, which does everything Port Peaker does and Putty does. I like to say it's Putty on steroids. Have you ever seen Hercules before?
I have not, but I'm writing it down.
I'll see if I can find the link and put it in the chat.
Okay, cool. I'm also reserving the right to put Putty on steroids into one of my comments at some point or another, just because that sounds kind of cool. So see, this is why we do these, because you guys know more about this stuff than I do. It's like I say, I just throw the idea out there. One of Tom's other ones was advanced port scanner, and he was focused primarily on freeware, so that that's beneficial too. But it was just a way to figure out what's running where. And I know, like for me, I'll look at the house network, and you think about, okay, well, I've got a computer running, my wife has a computer running, the boy has a computer running, 3 devices plus my cell phone plus the Amazon. Okay, whatever, it can't be that much. At any given time in this particular house, there'll be 20 to 30 devices on the internet connection. So it kind of blew me away to figure out exactly how many things were operating in here. And a lot of them are phoning home on a much more regular basis than I'd like to assume, but that is what it is. So that's a useful tool for that. And then we got talking about RTL SDR and various SDRs, and he got talking about the Nano Vna, and there is a new version coming out that's supposed to be a little more resistant to RF interference. So that's something else to kind of keep an eye on. A lot of the ham radio stuff that we've used for years here and there it's been, had that kind of limitation. It's not really geared for working in an RF environment. Not with big watts anyway. So seeing something like that is pretty cool. So there's a quick question. I mean, what do you use to sweep an antenna? Obviously the OIB3, but if you're working on a little more limited budget, what would you use?
I'd borrow yours, Jeff.
You might end up borrowing Steve's. He's a lot closer and doesn't have that international border in between. But yeah, that's, and we've done that before. It's not unknown for us to toddle out there and take measurements in the field. It comes with a pretty healthy price tag though. So this is one of those, like I say, it's if a Nano Vna, if you can get a low price one like this into the $50 to $200 range, then you're into something that'll work in the budget. And I mean, you remember when, let's see, Kintronic sells them, but before that, Tomco came out with their TE3 network analyzer for, what was it, $2,000-3,000? And what's the one that Kintronic sells? Barry, you should know that.
Isn't that the AIM, AIM?
Yeah, the Power Aim. Thank you, Harold. Yeah. And I mean, those were the sort of the entry to budget conscious vector meters. And that was pretty cool.
I've got the SARC 110. I don't use it on broadcast antennas, but on amateur antennas, and that works well for me. One thing I wonder about in like antenna resistance measurements and so on for the FCC, what do you do about calibration and getting the FCC to accept that?
Yeah, and that's, I mean, if you're talking a full-blown proof where you need calibration stickers, then at that point, you're probably better off working with what I call NIST traceable gear at least. And I mean, for us, we use, of course, an outside calibration lab for almost all of that stuff. But yeah, it depends what you're doing. Absolutely. Like if I'm just doing a routine check and set, or looking at, doing a quick sweep like this Nano Vna, don't know if it was this one or one of the other ones I was looking at had TDR functionality. So yeah, absolutely. I'm not going to do a full FCC as built proof. with something that I can't trace calibration on. Now, having said that, is the requirement still there for that, or is it another one of these? It's up to you, it's incumbent on you to take whatever steps are necessary to prove that you're actually taking the accurate measurement. You know, sort of like the mod monitor discussion I saw on Facebook the other day.
Yeah, mod monitors, of course, aren't required anymore, but your license does specify an antenna resistance on an AM. So ideally, that's traceable.
Yep. And that's the big question, whether it should be or must be. And, you know, I mean, anybody who's got any level of, I think, pride in what they do is going to be using calibrated equipment. And for that, I wouldn't suggest one of these. For routine tweaks outside of that, then perhaps, you know, maybe. So yeah, again, back to the mission that you're trying to achieve. I don't know if these VNAs will get down to the AM band anyway. That's another thing that I'm not familiar enough to be aware of. But there were some that do. So yeah, it's just another, like I say, another tool in the bag. One of the ones I shout out about a lot is, and everybody's heard me blather on about this guy, my little FLIR infrared camera. And I found a thermal imager on Amazon for 150 bucks. It's a little handheld jobby. I mean, it's not going to have impeccable resolution, but for finding a hot spot, you know, I mean, you can't beat this little guy, but for finding a hot spot, if you can do that for 150 bucks, that's a pretty cheap tool to have in the toolkit.
Is that a FLIR?
You know? The one I found online is not. The one I just held up to the camera is. Now the FLIRs right now they are running a sale. I want to say FLIR.com. I found the FLIR one of their newer editions of it for about $200, something like that. So again, prices have come down a lot on those. It's unreal. Let's see here, just taking a peek through to see if there's anything else. One of the other things Tom used a lot, and this is something, again, I don't do studio side stuff, so I don't know a lot about it, but he said there were a lot of times when you'd have to do bulk renaming from like MK4 to MP, whatever, assuming that the files were compatible. And he had a program called Bulk Rename Utility that let you do that sort of thing. So that's another one. One thing I could do, and I'll have to find the file, I did have a list of links to all this stuff too. So if that'd be useful, then I'll get that dredged up and send it off to Barry, and Barry, you could throw it up somewhere where folks could get to it.
All right.
Let's see.
Yeah, I put up the Hercules there for a few minutes while you were talking.
Yes. Yep, I saw that. And that say I've already got the notes and grabbed a screenshot of that one.
Yeah, the neat thing about Hercules is you can either be a receiver or a transmitter with it, and also it'll let you do serial or IP. It's wonderful. I used it quite a bit, and when I was taking care of the CBS and Entercom streams, it was the best tool to use to test encoders and so forth.
Okay. So again, useful information. And one of the other ones that Tom suggested, Notepad++. Has anybody here used that before?
Yes.
Oh,
What do
yeah.
you, so opinion? Because again, this is, it was new to me. I played with it a little, and then of course it went into the place that all my stuff that I don't use much goes to languish.
I just renamed it to Notepad on my machine.
It's the best thing if you're writing some basic programs or just doing some INI scripts or anything, because it doesn't put in any extra coding or anything. So it's wonderful. And the nice thing is it also does colors, which makes you able to read it better.
Yeah.
The other
saying
plus
it's-
to Notepad plus plus is I get tasked by my employer to write things like rewrite courses and write books and stuff that nobody cares about but me and my employer. And when my publisher's agent asks for basically flat file, she prefers either the Note plus plus or the Note, but she likes the plus plus because there's some coding in there, but it doesn't mess with her publisher's software, whatever she's using in house. So it's a real slick, real clean interface.
So
And,
much cleaner than sending the Word file where adding a picture changes the entire document.
Yeah, they hate the Word file because that embedded HTML just drives them nutsoid. They absolutely hate it. So
I will also say that I was introduced to Notepad plus plus by someone at Microsoft and said, use this, it's better than our stuff.
The color stuff is interesting in that it looks at the extension on the file name, and from that tries to determine what language you're writing in, and then does appropriate highlighting for that language.
So that's useful too. I mean, you know, I typically, well, I was going to say, I tend to write in mostly English, but I've done French and Spanish at various times. So yeah.
I always mean in computer language, sorry.
Oh. And there, open mouth, insert foot.
If you're on a Mac, BBE Edit and Apple's Text Edit might also be useful in that regard to accomplish what folks were talking about.
The HTML thing is interesting. Every now and then I will see an HTML tag showing up in our print daily newspaper here.
I've run into that on a bunch of places, or my all-time favorite, of course, is when you go to the airport and you see a screen displaying nothing but source code and no actual content. But that's kind of a digression. One of the other things that we got talking about was portable radios, because of course, you know, it's one of those things that you get to these days. I don't know about y'all, but for me, I spend a lot more time in hotels than I like to admit, and it went away for 18 months and now it's back, and it's kind of good, kind of bad, but you don't find a lot of decent radios in the average hotel. And Tom was talking up the Sangean HDR14 for being pretty decently sensitive, compact, and just good sounding in general. So, and I mean, that one, I found that one on Amazon for $80 just now, regular $99.
Following up on that, also that could be useful to carry to the site, especially if the radio can do mono, so you can tell if you've got a phase reversal on your audio.
Mm-hmm. And it does.
And to add to that, Eaton makes a very cheap radio for $19. That's actually pretty good. It's a wind-up radio, but it's really good if you're going out to visit transmitter sites, because not only can you hear the station because of the wind-up, it can also charge your phone because it has an ESB port, a USB port. So you got to think about using your phone nowadays, and I find it essential and keep it in the car all the time.
And you said that was Eaton?
ETON.
Yeah.
For $19, you might be able to get it past your manager without having to do a purchase order.
Let's see. So yeah, and I mean, I see, like, just searching Eaton really quick. You've got the FRX3 is the NOAA weather radio, and that's again wind up with the USB port, and a whole bunch of other ones under that name brand. Hand crank radio with flashlight, solar portable radios, all kinds of cool stuff. So the Eaton brand in general, if you, and the cool thing is at that price, you can buy two of them. If one of them does crap out, then you've always got a spare.
My son stole my first one because he loved it for his Boy Scout campouts because it qualified as the flashlight.
Mm-hmm. And of course, one of the things I said that nobody should ever be without in their toolbox, and I'm going to wander away from the camera for a second. Bear with me.
Well, he's gone, Mr. Richwine. Tell us about your noise reducing headphones.
Hi, can you hear me at all?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
I think both my mic was working. Laptop or not. A few years ago, I bought.
You're real soft.
A few years ago, I bought 3M work tunes headphones, and I got the fancy version that has Bluetooth, and I picked those up to the transmitter side. The headphones block out the blower noise, and you can, the fidelity's not super great, but it's enough to see if you're on the air and broadcasting clean. They also have a line-in jack, and I've actually made a cord that I can plug into the side of the headphones. You can bridge a line, analog audio, go different things.
Okay. For those of you that couldn't quite hear it, it's in the chat. 3M Work Tunes noise reducing headphones. You can hear the station while blocking out blower noise. Not a bad deal.
Yeah, and
Jeff?
I'm going to say that's one of the other things that's come down quite a bit. Like these ones that I'm wearing now are made by a company called MPOW, and I'm using the fancy USB mic instead of the ones in the headphones themselves. But they're not active noise canceling; they're passive just because they're over ear, and they do give a pretty good seal if I put them totally over the ear instead of leaving one tucked back. But yeah, I mean, $50. So headphones, decent quality ones have really come down, and these are Bluetooth, but they can also be used wired. There's a cord they provide with them that'll let you plug into a 1/8" plug, or you can run them off USB while you're charging them and listen at the same time. So yeah, that's pretty cool. The thing I was mentioning, and I get the chuckle out of this because it's one of those, the one thing that we almost all should have, and usually the first time you find out you need it is when you discover you don't have it, is one of these. And I just happen to have mine sitting in the corner from our webinar the other week. The site skeleton key, but the set of 2-foot bolt cutters is always a handy set of tool to have around. Oh, Ted's linked to the Eaton store in Amazon on the chat as well. So that now, how many people are using webcams at the transmitter site as a IP-based monitoring tool? Not just, and with the pan tilt zooms coming down. So for one example, I grabbed a Blue Rams is the company, but one of their nanny cams. And it's sitting there pointing at the front of our transmitter rack so that we can zoom in with the PTZ. We can look at all the meters on the front. So, if I lose the conventional remote control, I've still got access over the IP link. And in that particular one, the nanny cam could be wired into, say, a Max Connect router or something and be a totally redundant wireless type of backup. So, for when, not if, somebody drives a backhoe through your fiber.
A friend of mine has 2 LPTV stations on the Buttes, about 7 miles from here. He's got a PTZ camera on a tripod in front of the rack and uses that as a method. Also, with a TV setup up top, he can then cycle through the different channels and see what's going on with them with HNSC1.
And I mean, it's one of them, depending on how you wire up the network. I mean, like my whole house pretty much is Alexa-fied, and I should have unplugged that one before I said that out loud. Yeah, I mean, from the show in the kitchen, I can see pretty much anywhere around my entire property with various cameras that are all connected through the network. So it's pretty cool like that. I mean, it's one of these technologies where somebody on the other side of the Pacific is probably very busy monitoring my backyard and watching the deer walk through it. but it does serve a purpose at some point.
It's a very important point, really, because security is becoming more and more of an issue, especially as in certain areas, police departments get thinned out and response time is slower and slower.
Yeah.
Whether it be a wireless or a wired camera, whether it be one that is affected by RF. I know the Ys are pretty RF proof. Some of the others seem to be a little less so, but putting something together and you know, having some knowledge of what's going on out there is important.
Well, and that's, I think, the big thing. And beyond that, I mean, depending on where you go and what you get, I've got one out on my garage that is, it's got no physical connection to the house at all. It's not even to the electrical, it's solar powered. So it's solar powered, UV. It gives me good visibility in the driveway from the storage shed. So yeah, there's all kinds of options out there now. It's unreal.
Does anyone have a particular camera setup that they find to be their favorite, or one that they would say, stay away from?
Well, I do know that the Wise, and I say that's what I use for most of my stuff here, but the Wise does spend a lot of time on the network. Let's put it that way. Wireshark says that those things are more active than any of my Amazon devices.
The one thing you have with that, of course, is you have to pay for it's not a whole lot of money, but you've got to pay for the service, or you just get little 20-second video bites, whereas something like Lorex will be whatever you put into the camera in terms of an SD card, you could record for hours.
Right. And it really, I mean, well, the Wise will do that. You can record onto the SD card ad infinitum, and it just does it as a loop. But if you want to have alerting and send me the video, then whether you go free or subscription will determine exactly what you get. You know, so it's going to vary one to another. If you're using it for security and a critical installation, at that point, I might go more old school and use hardwired to, I say DVR, but whatever they record on now these days.
And also hide the camera a little bit in the eaves, or in a place where it isn't instantly recognizable by the bad guys.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. They're getting so small that it's a whole lot easier to do that. I mean, the PTZs, obviously, you still have a mechanical interface, so you're not going to get totally that small. But regular, you can put a fisheye lens in a peephole in a door, for example.
Yeah, much easier now than it used to be.
Yep.
Good idea to keep it on a separate network, though, if you're putting network outside your building.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And that is another one of those age-old discussions. I mean, it's the same as you don't put the programming network on the remote interface network, for example, and you absolutely don't let the sales guys surf the internet, or the program goes, I pick sales guys because I are one, but you don't want them surfing the internet on one of the production computers as a rule. So yeah, segregating is, and I don't know, I see Wayne in the middle of my screen, so he could probably talk much more to the security aspects of segregating networks than I could, but yeah, absolutely. You don't want to have that one eggs in one basket. Don't do it. See, I'm just trying to catch up on the screen. Commission has never required reference calibration for impedance measurements. Most everyone for years used GR standards for bridge checks. And yeah, so do have them calibrated. Yeah. So the calibration isn't required. The assumption is made that you're working with calibrated equipment. And definitely if you can point to that, if somebody calls you on it, that'd be a good thing. Eat and Wind Up Radio. Ted's posted a link for the Wind Up Radio, including, oh, look at that, NOAA and Environment Canada. It's bilingual. It speaks English and Canadian, or English and American, whichever.
We have a homeless problem around here, and because there's the potential for flooding along some of the rivers that they may camp out nearby, this would be something useful for folks that are in that situation. Especially with a solar cell, they could, you know, charge their phones without too much trouble.
Yeah. George had asked about the Wyze cameras around RF, and I can't speak for AM RF, but I know I've used them at several FM sites without any issue. Up to the biggest one I'm aware of was a class, was a 50 kilowatt anyway, one of the C's. So yeah, they're pretty good for that as far as I've seen. The other thing, and we were talking about security, and we were talking about looking at the transmitter metering and stuff. But one of the other things about a Wyze cam, and a buddy of mine sent me a picture of a transmitter site, and it features in a lot of my presentations of the Nautel transmitter with about a foot of snow drifted up at the front, because he logged in, saw the Wyze camera as showing that the front door had been left open by somebody. So that's another thing, you know, not just the security aspect of somebody breaking in, but making sure that the door actually was closed before the wind started blowing the snow into the gear.
Thank you, Nautel, for the Wyze camera I'm holding up. This was in regard to a submission of an item that I provided to Nautel, gosh, a year or so ago. Anyway, it's real cool. It's got USB C connection here for power. It's wireless, and then does the tilt function here, and the bottom part rotates to do the pan part of it, and it's been rather useful.
And this going back to radios, the C Crane has come out with a newer version of their solar radio. You've got a solar panel on the top, and it still have a crank if you are in a mood to crank your way around. I think, though, with the level of batteries that we now have that we can charge ahead of time and carry with us, I'm expecting to do less cranking with this one than plugging in the spare battery.
Yeah. And I mean,
Harry, you're making my comment too easy.
Oh, here it comes, Dave.
That camera, by the way, was at the time, I don't know if this is still a current model, but I think it was about 25 bucks on Amazon. So they're not terribly expensive. And if I recall correctly, this one will do 1920 by 1080. And if you're worried about connectivity dropping out, there's a little slot for a card on the bottom.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've got 64 gig SD cards in all of mine, so they're dutifully, like I say, they do a looping recording, and you can put a lot of hours in. You set the resolution they record at in the software for them. So
I used it as part of a cat trapping operation.
There you go.
Used it to be able to pull the line on the trap, and there we go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so for me, like I say, it's mostly used to watch the deer coming and going in the backyard more than anything. But you know, it's always useful to have those sort of things.
Well, it's the motion sensing that you want to be careful about, because you want to motion sense bad people and not a deer or a cow or something like that.
Yeah, you're not really going to avoid that too much, although they're starting to get a little smarter with how they do. Some of the cameras will, by software, decode it.
Right.
I mean, you know, you can set the sensitivity, so like cats and smaller animals don't set mine off at all. But they're still dumb enough at that price point that the deer will still trigger them. And I haven't messed with the smart software enough to see if that can be filtered out or not, but it is cool that exists.
Yeah.
Headlights will even set them off.
Some, yep, absolutely. One or two of my earlier ones, I picked up a couple of the Wyze cams right after they first came out, and those ones, a dust mote in the air would trigger it. And the cool thing was, at night, the infrared, because the dust mote would tend to be pretty close to the camera, it would trigger it, and there'd be this floating glowing orb going past the camera. and almost had the boy convinced that the house was haunted until real boss set us both straight and said, we shall not have this discussion. Let's see, and coyotes, yep, dogs make it and coyotes don't. So same deal. It definitely, you know, your mileage may vary depending on the software and the device, but again, handy tool. Of course, everybody knows that I beat the drum on safety, and I'm a big fan. And I saw Buckwaters on there. I don't know if he's still in, but BGS, shout out to them. They were giving away the little proximity voltage alerts not too long ago. You know, the little non-contact plastic tipped touch this, and if it screams, there's voltage on this terminal type things. And those are another thing, but beat the drum again, make sure before you rely on it, like you don't just touch it against something and say, oh, it didn't do anything, it must be a dead circuit, or it's a dead battery. So always test it on a known hot circuit. There, Barry's got one in front of him too, I think, or is that something else?
No, this is the first thing that I gave away when we were doing radio guide, and I've still got a few left, oddly enough.
Oh.
So
There you go. See, I had to make it down to Tucson and bum one of them off you. Now I've got a collection of the other ones, but again, a voltage tester of some sort that you can just and I use it a lot for if in the house. I've got a 50-year-old house, and the breakers are all mostly labeled now, sorta, kinda, and some of them are actually right, some of them not so much. And so I'll go downstairs and shut a breaker off, and then I'll go upstairs and jam the thing in there after I've tested it on a known live circuit, just to make sure that that was the one that I thought it was. So yeah, definitely I'm a big fan of those, both at home and at work.
One of the things that's really important that a lot of people don't have at the transmitter site is an extra long extension cord and also a drop light. Drop lights are so important because you might be working there with a flashlight, and when you finally find the problem, the battery dies.
Yep, you can't rely, basically, spare batteries is another thing. I mean, you absolutely got to have those, and we've kind of gone away from gizmos and gadgets, but it is when you get down to the tools you need. If you got anything battery powered, you need to have spare batteries on hand, and you need to refresh them on a fairly scheduled basis.
And also you definitely need, as I like to say, the bag of rags. You go into Home Depot and just buy the bag of towels, and also a thing of Windex, because you know when you're going to have to look there that it's going to be filthy, no matter how clean you keep your site.
Yep. And over and above that, this is my travel laptop bag. And if I go roaming into this thing among the masks and various other things, you need at least something like this, a little itty bitty, teeny weeny first aid kit. Whoops, and I'm dumping it all over the floor. I mean, this one's kind of cool because it's got like various burns and ointments and gels and postrums and nostrums and various other things, but at the very least, some Band-Aids, some butterfly wraps, and various things to close you up when you get caught across something that you shouldn't have got caught across. You know, so I've got first aid kits in my laptop case, both vehicles, various points in the house. I do a lot of woodworking and carpentry stuff at home, and I don't claim to be good at it, but I'm enthusiastic, and that counts, right? So the first aid kit is not really an option in this place. And same fire extinguishers. I've got those all over the place for the same reason, because I'm enthusiastic and not always inclined to practice what I preach.
And also look at those fire extinguishers to make sure the little meter on the side of them says good, because it really sucks when you go to use your fire extinguisher and it don't work. Yeah, I threw out one about 6 months ago. It was one of the little cheap econo models that didn't have a meter. So I pulled the pin, gave it a squeeze, and nothing happened. And yep, it went straight to recycling. And you know, I just found out this week that it is actually cheaper to replace some of those small extinguishers then get them recharged, because the
Right.
recharge price was more than it was to replace them.
Yeah, and I've got a couple of the decent can size, like the bigger ones that a little bigger than a 2-gallon or a 2-liter pop bottle, half-gallon, whatever pop bottle. And those ones have the meter on them with the little green zone to tell you, yes, good, not so good. Ted's mentioning that Ford has got power source capability up to 9.6 kilowatts. Wow.
Anybody buying these to use as their work vehicle in case they need to go power a transmitter site or whatever might be helpful with that? I'm just curious. This is relatively new, like this year.
Sounds like a hellish expensive generator to me. But of course, then again, you can drive your generator to the transmitter site. That's pretty cool.
But it's a 4-letter word.
So Chev. But yeah, no, that's something else. I mean, my Dodge had a built-in inverter with a 120 volt outlet in the back seat, which was pretty cool to keep the kids entertained. But yeah, again, coming back to alternate power sources, I've got battery packs, like those little Mophie battery packs for charging your USB devices. I mean, I've probably got 5 or 6 of them in the credenza over beside me, just because you can never have too many of those things.
They become very, very common, and prices have come down and capacity has increased dramatically. I even have one that is solar, and you can lay it just outside after you've done your 2 or 3 recharges, and it'll recharge while you're continuing to work.
Yeah, and another thing that we haven't touched on really, and I've got a small one here beside me, but smart outlets.
Oh yeah.
There is a outlet strip available on Amazon now, and I've probably still got it in my wish list. I don't remember if I had it on .com account or the Canadian account. Just bear with me a sec, but it's like a power strip with multiple outlets that you can individually switch on and off over IT. So if you've got like a laptop or a computer at a site that you need to reboot, then if you've got it configured to auto on a power outage, then you can just cycle the power to it. So that's one of the cool things that I'm seeing more and more of. Let's see, wish list.
They're really cool also if you have little kids and you want their TVs or computers not to work after a certain hour, you can turn them off on them.
Yep, absolutely. And okay, I'm not seeing that one anymore. I may have accidentally ordered it. But yeah, there are those are coming down in price. Like the one I was looking at, it was 320 volt outlets and 3 USB outlets for, I think it was about $40, give or take 40, 50 in that range. So I mean, it gives you the ability to individually switch devices on and off just by applying the power to them. Now, the cool thing about that sort of thing is, so I had one guy tell me, he goes, I've got my transmitter configured. I use the site controller feature in my transmitter to activate a contact closure to fire off a relay to apply the power to the coffee maker so that when I get to the site, the coffee's already hot. You know, so again, using technology to better our lives, right? But yeah, it's just the stuff we can do now with IP links and remote control that we couldn't do even 5 years ago is just, it's awesome. I'm looking to see what else comes to mind. Those are my big ones. I mean, there's, like I say, I could talk about tools, gadgets, and these days home renovations probably beyond belief. Anybody else got anything that really hits them as this is something that I didn't know I needed until I actually had it type of device?
How many times do you show up at a transmitter site and there's not even a roll of paper towels?
True, let alone toilet paper, any of the necessities. Now, has anybody had a chance, and I mean, not to plug well, I guess they're not a competitor, but not to plug any but one over another, but the little headphone disconnector from Angry Audio now caught my eye the other day. The one that saves you ripping or trying to rip the plug right off your headphones when you forget that they're still connected and you stand up and walk away. So, that kind of gadget. What else comes to mind?
It's not a gadget, but software, free software called Node Red has become my digital master tool.
Okay. So Node Red, what's it do?
It's Node that in a nutshell, it's non-blocking software so that as more jobs and more tasks come to the software, it utilizes multiple CPUs and stuff like that. It's a big thing in software in the last few years. But what this is a graphical interface developed by IBM to a software called Node.js, Node JavaScript. My current project that I'm using for Node Red is to accept a push from Spinatron. When the hosts at this station enter in their tracks, and from that, with Node Red, I'm extracting the track time, the playlist time for the show that's running, and then the station information, and based upon the time, puking out the appropriate data to their brand new RDS encoder that they've never had before.
Oh, cool.
So keeping the metadata straight as opposed to hoping that they might mess something up.
So this one right here, right?
Indeed.
There you go. So cool. That's again, useful information, and that's another one to add
Multitudes
to
of hours.
growing list.
I'm going to take advantage of this moment, and I'm going to ask if anybody has downloaded the CovPred that I talked about last time. That has anybody used it? Has anybody found it useful, or was that just a waste of my time?
So I have downloaded it, but I'll confess that I haven't yet played with it a whole lot, other than to look at it and go, "That looks really cool."
Well, it's not a very complicated program as we talked about before. It's just basically a very simple program to do contours, and maybe one of these days I'll add to it a derating for height, but it basically runs, you have to remember not to take it over your proper height, and but it works very nicely. It gives you some nice, easy to grab numbers there, and it's free.
Yep. And that's one of the ones that, like I mentioned when we were talking, can't remember, it was Gizmo, one of the webinars I've done recently, but Bob Groom's website is still up, and that's awesome. And there are just a lot of tools out there. Has anybody still got a working version of Continental's eSlide?
You pretty much have to get the older versions of Windows.
Yeah.
What I'm discovering, and I found this in working on CovPred, and also the next thing, Bob Helbush and I've been putting a little program together to you select streams that you want to remember, and without having to go all to their websites, just pull the different streams up or record them. But we found that Windows used to have all the command structure in there to drive exes. Now you have to include it in the exe file, and I think that's the big difference. And so if I could get my hands on the eSlide or the ARF Specialties Toolbox, or I was asking about Tom Osinkowski's, I've found one of his programs that he put in the public domain so far. I'll recompile them, and we can put them out.
Yeah, and I mean, the RF Specialties Toolbox, I don't know if that would require any permission from the group. I think I've got a copy of that on a USB stick somewhere. No, not USB, a USB hard drive rather. So I'll take a look for that and reach out to you and let you know.
Good.
You should be able to run that in compatibility mode. In Windows, you just say run as, and you can say choose Windows 95 or Windows XP and run it that way.
I've never tried that. That might be possible.
Yeah, compatibility mode is really easy in Windows. I think it goes down to DOS 6.
Okay. So I will, I'll poke around with that. And that's something that I haven't, yeah, I say that the big challenge I run into is I'm a RF guy in a software world, and I'm learning it little by little, but old dogs, new tricks. It's not easy. All right. On that note, I mean, that was, like I say, that was about all I had, but I'll turn the mic over to anybody else that wants to chat for a bit.
Hey, Jeff, the one thing that I was going to suggest that you have in your toolbox as well is either a headphone or a speaker, because if you're trying to find audio, and let's say you don't have, you just want to take a wire with leads and see if you hear, that's the best thing to do.
Yep. Like I say, these guys travel with me. They do have a USB or a 1/8" phono jack on them. And then I've got a phono jack to alligator clip adapter in my laptop bag. So yeah. Bill, were you going to say something there? Nope. Okay. But yeah, again, that, and I mean, as we get more into the digital audio with the AES and the audio over IP, that's harder to do unless you've got an adapter or a decoder of some sort. But yeah, I mean, at some point it's all analog.
I was going to add something on the non-contact alarm. I had a manufacturer send me wire strippers, side cutters, and needle nose that had non-contact alarms built into them, which has become handy at times.
Yeah, that is cool. So basically you get close to something and it hollers at you before you touch it?
Yeah, if you're probing around in the light switch box, it helps the idiots that are not paying attention.
Well, it's not necessarily idiots. I can tell you this goes back 40 some years. I was doing some work on a console, a Gatesway, a Dual Lux, if you're old enough to remember those. And we were going inside, there was like 100 extra wires that didn't go anywhere. And we were cutting them out. And all of a sudden, one of them actually was carrying AC on it. And to this day, my dikes have a little cutout in them. And yeah, a tool that would remind you that you're approaching AC, that would be good. Do you know the maker?
Been trying to think of that the last 5 minutes.
That'd be a useful one too. Yeah, because and I think we've almost all got a set of notch dikes. For me, it was finding 120 volts on a quad phone cable in the bottom of an old rack that was supposed to be totally disconnected.
Yeah, it was probably for driving an old on-air light or something like that. I've gotten shocked from you take the line breaker off on the transmitter, the 3-phase, and then you're digging around in there and find that the 120 volts for the crystal heaters on a separate breaker.
Yeah, I've even our old 50 kilowatt didn't have crystal, but it had a separate 120 volt feed for the exciter as opposed to the 480 or 600 volts for the main PA power supplies. So yeah, you could shut the two big wall breakers off, and if you didn't think to shut that 120 off and then reached under the exciter just the wrong way, there's where the 120 came in. Nice bare terminals ready for you. Let's see, Matt's mentioned RDS spy in the comments on decoding RDS from a composite input. That's a good idea. Mary's got the EIA power rate chart. This is a good one if you're figuring out electrical savings, and I've been using that EIA. It's the U.S. Energy Information Administration. They maintain average monthly power rates for commercial, for private, for industrial, for each of the 50 states. And I don't know, they might do the Puerto Rico and Guam too, but I'm not sure about that. So if you do any power comparisons or anything like that, they're a useful tool. Let's see here. Monitor manage networks with Observium. to let you know if a problem's in hardware or software, and that is also useful. So Matt, thanks for that one. All right, on that note, folks, I am going to disappear and go create havoc in, I think, the kitchen today. But just as a side note, in my infinite spare time, Real Bosses decided that we're going to renovate pretty much the entire house simultaneously. So wish me luck and pray for me. I'm going to need it.
When you get done, you can come down here.
Somebody stuck up a note here, and let me roll it back and see. Oh, yeah, Mary talking about this electricity calculator. Don't you have one of those, Jeff, that
Yes.
talks about how upgrading a tube transmitter to...
We've got separate ones for AM and FM. If you go to our website and in the little search window in the top right-hand corner, you can type in cost of operation, and it will flick you to a couple of them there. And the top one is the tube versus solid. And I say tube versus, it really doesn't matter. You do need to know your AC efficiency, not your plate efficiency. And that's important to remember because there's a significant difference between the two. I mean, as an example, Energyonics had published a 70% DC efficiency, but typical AC was significantly lower. And not to pick on Bernie's gear, I mean, the plate modulation or grounded grid in general will tend to be lower efficiency overall.
Why not pick on Bernie?
I like Bernie.
You do? I haven't talked to him in a long time.
Obviously. But yeah, no, Bernie was a character. And I mean, it's just one of those things that, you know, but you can put in your TPO, you can put in your time or day usage per day, cost of parts and efficiency, put in your electricity cost, and then it will tell you what a newer box would run on cost of operation. And the cool thing is that I don't think with us, you can only select our transmitters, but be honest, these days, the efficiency, overall efficiency, one solid state transmitter to another, not a lot of difference. So, you know, you could use it for whatever. That's me being the worst sales guy in the world right there. But yeah, no, buy the Nautel. There, I did it. All right. Anyway, on that note, folks, I'm going to bow out, but thanks very much for putting up with me today.